is Easter almost already here? I'm Jane from Sustain My Craft Habit, and today we have a few Dollar Tree Easter crafts to share with you. Let's get started. For our first idea, we're going to make some decorative picks using these carrot cutouts from Dollar Tree. I always wonder what to make with these cute cutouts, and so I hope you enjoy this idea. I started by decoupaging on this green gingham paper napkin onto the leafy part of each carrot. I used a little bit of sandpaper to get the excess napkin off of there. I next painted the carrots with some orange acrylic paint, a very bright, I think it was called pumpkin orange, and you could do these in different shades of orange, would look really cute, or those heirloom carrots that come in whites and burgundies and all those different colors, but I went more traditional and gave them a good coat of this orange paint on both sides. After the orange paint was dry, I decided to add a bit of texture with some brown wax. You could use a bit of brown paint, but just add some cross hatches to mimic those grooves that you find in a carrot. I just brushed the excess wax off with a little paper towel and then glued my carrots together. So I used a dowel and a little bit of hot glue and wedged that dowel in between the two carrots. And that's all there is to crafting these adorable carrot picks. You can make a bunch of them to put in your planters or your Easter arrangements. To continue on the carrot theme, we're going to craft an adorable piece of button art using this surface from Dollar Tree. I wanted to add a bit of texture. This part is totally optional, but I got it in my head that I wanted to try to stencil with a textured paint. And so that's what I'm doing here, using this Decor sand texture paint and smooshing that through my stencil to see if it'll create the pattern a little bit raised. And it did a really nice job. I repeated that process on a second part of the plaque. And again, it turned out really beautifully. I think I'm going to use this technique on other projects as well. Okay, now to the button art time. I sort of sketched out a few thin carrots using a pencil just to help me with the placement of the buttons later on in the project. But because the carrots were going to be pretty narrow, I knew that placing the buttons down on their own wouldn't kind of fill in the whole space. So I decided to first paint the carrots underneath where the buttons were going to go. And I just used 3 shades of this pretty orange. They're a bit more earthy, not a bright orange, but this nice kind of brownish one, and then one that was really light, and then a third one in a medium shade of orange. Did you know that only a small percentage of people who watch our videos are subscribed? So if you're new to Sustain My Craft Habit, welcome! And if you're enjoying this video, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. Thank you! Once those carrot shapes were dry, it was time to start adding those buttons. Now these buttons I picked up at Dollar Tree, and they're so cute. They come in different shades and different sizes all in the same package. So I started with sort of the bigger buttons, and I tried to do a bit of color matching to my carrots. So a bit more of the orangey one on the outer carrot, more muted tones in the middle, and then the lighter tones on the far left carrot. And I just kind of worked from the bigger buttons to the smaller ones. I think it looks so cute. I finished this off with some faux greenery that I had. I have these different types of grasses or leaves, so I used a different one for each carrot, and I just think it added so much texture to this piece. For some final touches, I added little raffia bows at the top of each carrot and a little blue butterfly. And I just think this is the perfect piece of art for Easter and spring, and or even just to have in a farmhouse style kitchen. We're going to use this Dollar Tree platter for our next cute Easter craft. I started by painting the outer border with a white chalky paint and letting that completely dry. I sprayed the top paper layer of some corrugated cardboard to wet it, and then it peeled right off to reveal that beautiful corrugation. I had cut this piece of cardboard so that it would fit right inside the tray. A sanding block also helps to remove all those bits and pieces in between the grooves of the corrugation. After dry brushing the surface with a little bit of white chalky paint, I glued that panel right in there. I just love how this brings out all the ridges and the lines of the cardboard. Now it was time to decoupage our little bunnies. I painted them first white just to make sure that they'd be nice and bright underneath the decoupage paper, and I used 3 different Easter themed or spring themed napkins for this. I tried to find 3 that sort of coordinated with their yellows and peach tones. I just brushed each bunny with a coat of Mod Podge, and then after that dried, I ironed the napkin right onto that surface. To remove the excess napkin, I just first cut around with my scissors and then used my sanding block to get into all those little grooves, and it revealed this beautiful decoupage little bunny design. I repeated that process to decoupage different napkin patterns onto the other 2 bunnies. And so now I have these 3 beautifully coordinating little accents. I brushed a little bit of brown wax around the outside of the bunnies as well as the tray to give it a bit of an aged antique look. Next, it was time to make a bow. I opted for a messy bow design, which involves layering different ribbons. Starting with the thickest one, I used this lace burlap one that I got at Dollar Tree, then added this thinner pink ribbon and decided that it needed a bit more color, so I pulled out this striped Easter ribbon. After layering them, I scrunched them all together, pinched it in the center, and then wrapped it with a little bit of craft wire to hold it nice and tight. I glued the bow to the top of the platter and then tidy up the edges by trimming them a bit. And for the finishing touch, I added this little jewel that I had bought from Amazon. When I spotted this egg tray at Dollar Tree, I thought that we could make a wreath out of it using some plastic eggs as well. I had gathered these from last year that the kids had used for their Easter egg hunt. We're also going to use some soft blue chalky paint, Spanish moss, and a set of string lights. I started by painting each of the eggs with Deco Art's chalky finish paint in Vintage. You can use any color of chalk paint. It sticks best, I find, to plastic, and it gives it that nice matte finish that we were going for. I liked this soft blue paint. It kind of reminded me of a robin's egg blue, and we're going to be adding some brown speckles on there as well to really give it that feel. That first sighting of those robins always is a sign of spring for us, and I must admit I haven't seen them yet, although I hear all sorts of other birds around. And we used to have a nest right outside our window at home. So it's really exciting this time of year to see all the nature come back to life. As a little nature break, have you ever spotted a white squirrel? Staying at my mom's house in the country over the March break this year, out the window, I spotted this beautiful white squirrel. We have them. They're pretty rare, but there seems to be a cluster of them in this area of southwestern Ontario, and they're really exciting to see. Do you have squirrels in your area of the world? Okay, so after painting all the eggs with a coat of the chalky paint, I dried them and then glued them shut. Some of them did need a touch up with a second coat, but that's okay. It's better to do 2 lighter coats than a thick, clumpy, heavier one. After they were dried and painted, I just glued them into those compartments on that egg tray. And this is where we're adding the little speckles. I watered down some brown paint with a bit of water and then used my paintbrush and just kind of splattered them over the eggs. This was really messy. I don't know why. The splatter got everywhere, but it was effective to give us that speckled robin egg kind of look. After gluing some of those eggs in place, I flipped the whole tray over to glue my string lights in place. I just wanted it to be kind of scattered throughout the back of the tray, which is clear, so the idea was that the glow of the lights would come shining through. I hid the battery pack behind one of the eggs, and I have one of these little finger protectors. It's a silicone finger protector, which does an amazing job to hold when I have to stick my finger into the hot glue and hold these pieces in place. So once that was there, and I'll show you at the end of the video how this looks in the dark, all lit up. It was really, really pretty. I just continued by gluing some Spanish moss between the eggs. There's so many options for the center part of this egg wreath. You could leave it blank or clear and that would look really pretty, but I wanted to put something in here. You could put a little cricket phrase in there. I had some of these wood carrots that I believe came from Dollar Tree or Dollarama last year, and I painted them a light shade of orange and a little bit of white mixed in there to get muted down color to go with this farmhouse kind of vibe. I painted the top green and then brushed on some of that same brown that I used for the speckling of the eggs to create a little bit of texture. To finish this off, I made a messy bow with some ribbon, including a little bit of burlap lace ribbon and some matching blue and green ones, and then put on this cute little bunny cutout that I had painted white. I'm just adding some details, including a bit of distressing with some ink around the edges. I wasn't too happy with how this turned out. I mean, I'll say I'm not a fine artist by any stretch of the imagination. But anyways, just to add a little bit of texture, I touched up over it with some white. I still think it looks super cute. And then after really finishing it off with more Spanish moss, I think this piece looks so, so pretty. We can hang it on the door. You can have it just leaning up on a shelf or put it on a plate stand for beautiful mantle decor. And this is how it looks like with the lights on. And then when you turn the lights off, it just has this beautiful glow of the twinkle lights from behind. So I'm seeing that I've done a lot of carrot crafts in this video, which made me wonder, when did carrots become a part of spring? I mean, carrots usually are harvested in the fall, and I think of them more as an autumn type of vegetable, but do you know why that is? I guess maybe because the Easter Bunny eats the carrots. In any case, I have this wood carrot cutout from Dollar Tree, and I used this thrifted surface to create an adorable carrots and peas themed sign. Now, if you don't have a thrifted surface, you could use a canvas or a wood plaque from the dollar store or other craft store to create this piece of art, but I just wanted to use up what I already have. I started by layering a coat of white Elmer's glue on there because I wanted to create a crackle finish. While that Elmer's glue was still wet, I painted over it with my lace colored chalky paint. It's a soft cream color, not quite white. As that was drying, I took my carrot and just painted it with some orange paint that I had mixed up from a couple colors. And I like how these different shades of orange give it a bit of a streaky appearance, which is when you pull a carrot out of the ground, it has all that texture, a little bit of dirt on there and some grooves. And so that's what I was emulating here. I painted the greenery with a soft moss green color that I'll also use to paint some wood beads to create the peas. I wanted to add a little floral touch to my carrots, so we fussy cut these florets out of a paper napkin that was Easter themed, and then I simply decoupaged that right onto the bottom part of the carrot. To add a little bit of sparkle to our craft, I brushed some glue onto the stem and added diamond dust. And then for extra dimension, I brushed some brown wax around the outer edge of the carrot and then rub that in with a paper towel. Well, I love to eat carrots. Peas, I mean, I'll eat them, but they are definitely not my favorite. And I don't understand the phrase of going together like carrots and peas, but that was suggested by one of our viewers when I did this craft on a live video. And so I thought it'd be cute to add some peas along with this carrot to the sign. Now it was time to put everything together. I glued the carrot to the board along with the peas. I'd added on a cute little bow to the carrot. I next cut out a bit of cardboard and took the top layer off to reveal the corrugation, glued that in place, and then layered over that another little printout that I had that said, "We go together like carrots and peas." I had printed this out on my printer at home on some coffee dyed paper, and we have a tutorial for how to do that at sustainmycrafthabit.com. But I basically, after printing it, used some water, and then that helped to tear these strips off of my paper. I painted the edges with a little bit of that brown wax to give them an aged look, and then I just glued it all together on top of the cardboard cutout. And now we have this beautiful farmhouse style sign with just a few simple elements. For our next Dollar Tree Easter craft, we're going to make adorable topiaries with Easter eggs. I went through my paper napkin collection to find coordinating napkins that had kind of those soft spring colors. Yellow, pink, blue. I tried to avoid the bright parts of the napkin, so I fussy cut all the little flower designs. And if you haven't heard that phrase, fussy cut means you just take the time to cut around all those fussy little details of a design using a pair of scissors. I did that both with this floral napkin to isolate some little blooms, as well as this adorable bunny napkin. This one had some different colored bunnies and little chicks. After cutting those out, I started painting my eggs that also came from the dollar store with white chalky paint just to cover the color of them. If you can find white eggs, that's even better, but I couldn't find any, so I went with these. And they're a little bit larger than the regular small size plastic Easter eggs. So you want to find ones that are a bit bigger. These came 3 in a pack, and they're about the same width across as the top of the little clay pots that we're going to use for the base. Now, painting those coats of white chalky paint was a little tricky just because it's hard to hold the egg and not get white paint all over your hand. So I decided to use the hole that I had drilled out in advance for the stick that we're going to put in there. And I just used my hand drill to drill the holes in the bottom. While those were drying, I painted each of my clay pots. So I wanted to do a crackle finish and started by applying a coat of white school glue all around. And while that was still wet, I painted over it with my white chalky paint. And as this dried, I used my heat tool or blow dryer you can use to help dry the paint a little bit faster, or it will dry on its own with this really beautiful distressed crackle finish. And I repeated that with the other little clay pot as well. Next, it was time to decoupage those pieces that I had cut out onto the painted eggs. And I just put a little bit of Mod Podge on the egg and then placed the napkin cutout over top and used the brush to press it all into the glue. And this is a great way to decoupage if you're using small designs, and especially on a curved surface. My preferred way to decoupage is with the iron-on method, but on a plastic rounded surface with a small little napkin, this is just much faster and easier to do it this way. I've often thought about decoupaging on actual eggs, so hard-boiled eggs, but I feel bad because I don't think you could eat them afterwards. We do always paint eggs. The kids love to do it for Easter with the food dye, but I don't know if you can do that with Mod Podge. Have you ever tried that? Do you think it would work? I use the same strategy with the bunny napkin, cut them into little segments and then decoupage them on here. This was really good because I could put them a bit closer together to make the designs a bit fuller. While the decoupage glue was drying, I started assembling those little pots. I cut a little bit of floral foam to fit right inside. And then I covered the opening with some Spanish moss. This came from, I think, the dollar store years ago, so I've had it forever, but I know that you can get it there as well. Then, after gluing the egg to the dowel, just so that it wouldn't flop all the way around, I simply stuck that right into the little pot, and I cut my dowels to be 2 different sizes so that my eggs were 2 different heights when placed side by side. The finishing touch for these little Easter egg topiaries was to add on a bow right underneath the egg, and I actually covered it with a little button to make it look nice and finished. Now this set I made 2, but I'm going to make 1 more because I think 3 in a little cluster, either on a tray or on your mantle, will just be so adorable together. Next, we're going to craft a simple but adorable little sign for spring or Easter. I'm using one of these little palette signs from the dollar store and a wood cutout. We're going to give the little palette sign a rustic distressed finish with a bit of school glue that I'm spreading on here. And then we're going to put our white paint over top to get that nice crackle effect. At this point, I also painted the bunny surface with the white paint to get it ready for decoupaging. Now, while those pieces were drying, I went ahead and made a messy bow. And this involves taking different ribbons and layering them on top of each other to create a bow. I had a length of this black and white stripe ribbon that was too small to make a loopy bow, but was perfect for this technique. I layered on there a slightly narrower teal ribbon and then an even narrower gray one to coordinate with the napkin that I'm going to use to decoupage onto the bunny. And so once you cross these over and then put the third one across those, you can pinch it all together and it just creates this whimsical, really little bow that is perfect for all sorts of crafting projects. And then you can clean up the ends by either cutting dovetails or cutting them at an angle. Okay, now it's time to decoupage. When I made this craft, I was at my mom's and I didn't have my little mini iron, so we're doing decoupage the original way. And I placed my napkin over top, put a little bit of Mod Podge on there, a nice thin coat, and I like to do this in sections. So I lift up the top part of the napkin and press that on there. I had some white glue still left on my brush, but I kind of liked how it gave this frosted effect almost on top of the napkin. And then I repeated this on the bottom part. Again, the trick with this I find is to have a nice thin coat of Mod Podge and then not fuss too much on the top coat because it's more likely to rip and wrinkle. I did my best to get it to be wrinkle free. And it still looked beautiful, but if I had my iron, I would have appreciated that method more because you can really get it to look nice and smooth. After sanding the excess napkin off of the bunny, it was time to put all my pieces together. I simply glued her to the front of the crackled wood panel and then added my bow. I love how this piece turned out. I think she'd make a lovely gift in an Easter basket or for a hostess if you're going visiting for the season. We're going to use some felt sheets and a few other Dollar Tree supplies to make adorable standing bunnies. You can head over to sustainmycrafthabit.com to grab the printable template and then cut out 2 bunnies, one for the front and one for the back, in each color of felt. The printable template has 2 sizes of bunnies, so you can make them in different colors. You could also use scrap fabric for this craft, and while we've done it with a no-sew method, you could easily sew around the edges in the later step with a sewing machine to give a slightly different kind of look. We used a sharp pair of scissors to cut out the shapes. You'll need 2 of the color to make 1 bunny, and you could also use your Cricut machine and import it as the SVG file that we have available for download. We have a little tip for you when cutting felt fabric. Rather than lifting it up and trying to hold the template and the felt in your hand, try to keep them flat on your surface and move your scissors around. This will make sure that you have a smooth finish and true to the template cutting. When cutting by hand, it's hard to get them exactly the same, so you'll want to layer the one shape over the other and trim anywhere that they're not exactly lined up. Next, it's time to assemble our little bunnies. I'm using my hot glue gun and just putting a bead of glue around the outer edge. I start with the ears at the top and slowly work my way down. When I get towards the bottom, I'm going to leave a little gap in which we can put the stuffing. I used a little bit of polyfill stuffing for this. You can use whatever you have. If you have a little bit of leftover scrap fabric, or if you have little bits of that leftover felt, you can use them for the stuffing and just tuck it in there to make it a little bit squishy. You don't want to overstuff it, but it's really just to give it a little bit of a fuller kind of effect. You're going to do this similarly if you sew around that outer edge. Just leave a little gap on the bottom to be able to put the stuffing inside before closing it. I added a little bow to the front of my bunny and then a little white pom-pom to the back for the tail. To finish her off, we're going to place a dowel on the inside and just kind of look at the different heights that you want for your bunnies to be. I like the smaller one to be a little bit shorter than the taller one, so I cut the dowel a bit closer and then glued my bunny closed around there. If you put the dowel all the way through the bunny, it'll give it extra stability so that it doesn't flop over later. And then to make her stand, we just drilled a little hole in this piece of birch, or you could use another wood slice and stick that dowel in there. And now you have an adorable set of little decorative bunnies. Easter or spring. So I found this wood box at the thrift store actually, but I know I've seen them or similar ones at Dollar Tree, and I wanted to dress it up a bit. So we're going to use some wood beads to create a bit of a border and texture up along the top, and I just strung them together on some wire and then glued them around there. I love this technique. I've used it in other projects when I want to add a decorative border around an edge, and it is pretty simple to do. I think this trick with using the wire and threading it onto the wire is much easier than doing them one by one, which takes forever and then you can never get them quite as even. I next flipped my box over and added some feet on there. I used the same wood beads, and this was kind of fun. I used 3 different sizes and stacked them together to make these adorable little decorative feet. Next, I used some white chalky paint to dry brush all over those beads and the sides of the box and the feet to kind of bring it cohesively together, although it looked really nice unfinished as well. I must admit, I just wanted to brighten it up a little bit. So I think my favorite part of this craft is this next part, which involves using my stamps that I've had for over 20 years. Tell me I'm not alone. These stamps were from Stamping Up. I remember when I was in my 20s, my friend Debbie, she was a Stamping Up consultant, and I think I was her biggest customer. And I have a whole bin of these gorgeous stamps, and I was just so excited to be able to use them in this craft. And I feel like now I want to use them even more. I started pulling them out when I did my junk journal craft video, which I've linked to it below. You can find that. And it's just a fun way to revisit old supplies. Now that I added those little touches, it was time to put my greenery in there. I just shoved a block of floral foam and then this faux boxwood that came from the dollar store as well. I'm so happy with my farmhouse centerpiece box. I change up the florals for different seasons and just reuse this all the time. But of course, for Easter, I wanted to add a bunny in there, and I found some of this old burlap sack fabric in I don't even know, somewhere in a bin, and wanted to make a little bunny with it, kind of a primitive style. So I just traced on there the outline of a simple bunny shape and then cut that out both front and back because we need obviously 2 sides. This is going to be very similar to the felt bunny craft earlier in this video, and you could use the same template to make this one as well. It's a very similar idea. I just glued in there my wood dowel and then use the glue to fasten all the way around the outside. If you have a sewing machine or wanted to hand stitch, you could do this as well. For this one, instead of the polyfill, I just used extra scraps of the burlap to tuck in there to add a little bit of fluffiness to the bunny, and then finished by gluing all the way around the rest of it to close it all up. I just trimmed around where it needed a little bit more definition and tidying up, and then dry brushed my whole bunny with that white chalky paint. Because my burlap had some stains on it and marks on it, this really helped to sort of tidy it up and clean it up. I also added some pink for the cheeks and around the ears, and then added a little bow around the neck for a bow tie. Next, for our Easter centerpiece, we added in these paper flowers that we made using cardstock paper and our Cricut cutting machine, and we have a whole video on how to do that I'll link below. The final touch for our centerpiece are some adorable wood bead carrots. Now, these little carrots you could use on your tiered tray, on a shelf, to hang them on a gift basket, even on a piece of decor like I did here. Such a cute idea. You're just going to take your wood beads and arrange them from largest to smallest, string them onto some wire or even twine if you don't have the wire, and it looks like a nice rustic carrot shape. I then painted mine with some orange acrylic paint and then glued a tuft of faux greenery into the top. I think these are so adorable. You could do them different shades of orange, and they just add like the perfect touch to this centerpiece. I got room to breathe. Been a long chase, but at last I'm free. These open woods, I knew I could find peace. I was so excited to use this wood Easter egg shape. I thought it would be so fun to paint and decoupage and then use it to create a wreath. I started by painting the whole thing white just to have a nice neutral background to craft with. After drying that, I added some Mod Podge to a few of the spaces that I wanted to decoupage onto. I started with this raised zigzag section and used this pretty floral napkin. The other napkins I coordinated with this one. So this part was the easiest one to decoupage because I was able to use the ridges of the raised zigzag and my sanding block to remove the excess napkin, and look how pretty that looked. I repeated this process with the top part of the egg using a different but coordinating napkin. It was a little trickier to trim the excess napkin here. The outer part was okay, but this inside with the zigzag edge was hard to get at. So I started by using a little bit of water on a fine tip paintbrush, and that helped to wet the paper so that I could tear it along the line that I had decoupaged. In the end, it worked quite well, and I just had to go in with my utility knife later and clean it up a bit. So you can see here, I repeated that process on the other egg and added some buttons to create a little bit of embellishment. For the left side egg, I just painted it with a little bit of this blue chalky paint and some metallic paint. I'm not sure that I love that egg on the left. I may fix it up later. But for now, we just kept going, and I affixed the decoupaged Easter egg cutout to this handmade wreath. My mom had made it from some dogwood branches, and I just thought it'd be cute to use. So I put the eggs on the bottom and then a collection of beautiful florals. These were last year from Dollar Tree. I picked up a bunch of them, and they just were really, really lovely with their soft pinks and almost peachy colors. And I just tucked those in all the way around the top part of the wreath. I found that creating little clusters that I tied together with some wire and then used that wire to attach the clusters to the wreath form really helped to pull everything together. I just love this little wreath. It's so bright, happy, and colorful, and perfect for this time of year. Decoupaging rocks with a pretty napkin is really satisfying and super easy. I started by painting a coat of white multi-surface paint on these rocks. This helps to lighten them so that the napkin really sticks out and also seals the rock for crafting with. I next took a bit of this Dollar Tree napkin design and used some water on my paintbrush to basically separate out the bunny part of the napkin. You could use the whole napkin, but I just really liked to kind of have him be the center of the show. So after tearing the excess away, this was ready to decoupage onto the rock. And this part was pretty easy. I placed my napkin down and then folded it over and did this in little sections. I applied some Mod Podge to the rock, spread that around, and then placed my napkin over top, and it really just helped to cover it. You can seal it in with a little bit more of the Mod Podge, and then repeat that with the other side of the rock. Another approach is to use the iron-on method, which I also like to do, where you paint the rock with the Mod Podge, let it dry completely, and then iron the napkin on. An optional step to add a little bit of sparkle is to add some glitter onto your decoupaged rocks by first applying some glue or Mod Podge and then sprinkling that glitter over top. Now these decoupaged rocks look pretty cute as they are, but I wanted to add some little wire ears just for why not, right? And actually you can kind of tuck place cards in there to have these as place card holders as well. So I simply bent the wire, which I also got at the dollar store, to form the bunny ear shape and then wrap that around the rock with a little bit of glue just to hold it in place. I think these little birdhouses from any dollar store are such a great value. They tend to be super inexpensive, yet adorable and fun to craft with. So I'm going to create a little cluster, almost a birdhouse village with these soft pastel colors. I started by painting the first house with a soft blue color, and I'm just using some acrylic paints for this craft. This is definitely something that your kids or grandkids could also craft with you and make their own little spring birdhouses. I painted a second one with a soft pink color and then painted some accents of my other houses with these colors. So I did the roof on one blue and the walls of the house pink, and then I also did the third one with white in there as well. Once those base coats of paint dried, I took my white paint and dry brushed it all over the surface of them. This really helped to soften it up and give it that nice pastel look. They almost look frosted, so you just want to put a little bit of paint on your brush and take the excess off and then use that to go over the painted surface. Now it's time to add some fun embellishments. I had this silicone mold I ordered from Amazon, and I just filled in the compartments with some hot glue to create the shapes. While that was drying or cooling down, I dry brushed some of the other houses with a little bit more blue paint and a little soft gray paint, again just to add a bit of texture and aging. I think this layering and adding of different colors and textures, what makes the craft look a little bit more sophisticated than painted a solid color. Now once my glue shapes had set, I painted them in coordinating shades of pink and even a little bit of green, and then glued those to the front of the house. I think this is so cute, giving it a little three-dimensional element. I added little coordinating bows on the underneath the roof of each house, and then painted the details like the little perch and the base with some gray paint. On the top, if you'd like, you can sprinkle on some diamond dust or other glitter for sparkle. And that's how we crafted this adorable birdhouse village. I think they are just perfect for the spring or your Easter tablescape. And you could even put them in a gift basket as an Easter gift. These cute little clay pots that you can get at the dollar store make really good containers to hold Easter treats. So I started by painting this one with white paint. We're going to turn it into a sweet little bunny. Just one coat usually will do the trick, and make sure to go around the rim a little bit as well. And I painted a second clay pot with orange acrylic paint. If you need to, you can add a second coat for better coverage, but I think the one coat did a pretty good job here. Once the paint was dry, it was time to add a little face to the bunny pot. So I just used my Sharpie marker and added some cute eyes with lashes and little nose and some whiskers. So very simple design. Now it's time to make the bunny ears. For this I used some white and pink felt, and I just simply cut them into the shape of ears, the white shape being a little bit larger than the pink shape. And for the carrot one, I used 2 shades of green felt. This doesn't have to be perfect, but this is for the greenery that comes up on the top of a carrot. If you don't have felt, you could also create this similar effect using paper, so even construction paper, and then this is something that the kids can help to make as well. For the little ears, I simply glued the pink piece inside the white piece, gathered it a bit along the bottom edge, and then glued those into the back part of the pot rim. Now my little bunny needed a little extra bling, so I brushed on some Mod Podge and then put some fine glitter around that top rim for the bunny, and repeated that as well for the carrot. For the carrot, I just tied some raffia around the greenery to help hold that together, give it a little height. And finally, I added just a cute little pink bow to the bunny. And that's it. Fill your little clay pots with some chocolate Easter eggs or chocolate carrots. These I got at the dollar store, but you can use whatever you'd like. And you can have these as decorative or to fill an Easter basket. I started by measuring out the inside of this wood panel from the Dollarama, and then cutting a piece of scrapbook paper also from the Dollarama to fit in there. This particular sheet of paper has such a lovely speckled kind of rose gold pattern on there that reminded us of a speckled egg. So that went in there with a bit of Mod Podge to glue it to the wood. And then I simply painted the frame, outer frame, with a coordinating rose gold color. Next, I used a bit of scrap paper to cut out a template for my egg that would fit inside this panel. Now it's time to start creating those pinecone flowers, and I use these little pine cones that we have and cut them into small florets. And then we painted them in 3 different shades of blue and teal colors. At first I wasn't sure how this was going to look. I was worried when I saw them painted that it would not work, but then once we started assembling them all together, it completely took on a life of its own. So I just used the template that I traced, the pencil line, and went around there and filled that egg shape in with all these beautiful painted pine cones. This took a little bit of time, but with my hot glue gun and all these pieces, it came together and looked absolutely gorgeous. I added some small white pearl beads into the centers of some of the pinecone flowers, and then on others I brushed them with a bit of Mod Podge and then sprinkled them with some diamond dust for a little bit of sparkle and glitter. I added some eyelets to the top of the frame for hanging, and then finally we added this cute little butterfly cutout with some diamond dust on it to the egg. And there you go, a unique and beautiful piece of decor with dollar store supplies and pine cones for your spring decorating. This galvanized metal container and wood cutout inspired me to make a bunny butt centerpiece. I started by painting a base coat of white, this is just acrylic paint, also from the dollar store, over the entire bunny butt surface. I next applied a coat of Mod Podge to the body part of the bunny and left the feet unpainted. I used this pretty floral paper napkin to decoupage there around the feet, so leaving the feet uncovered. I just had to trim out little bits so that I could get in there, and then used my mini iron to press the little sections down. I repeated this on the other side, and then I was able to use a bit of sandpaper to trim off the excess of the napkin. I know this is a little non-traditional, this floral pattern on the bunny, but I just think it's so pretty and unexpected. I did want to add some sparkle to the other areas of this shape, so I brushed on a nice coat of the Mod Podge and then sprinkled on some diamond dust to give it nice glitter. You could also put maybe something like cotton balls or cotton fur to give it a fluffier or softer finish, but I wanted to have it sparkle. So now it's time to create our centerpiece arrangement. I used a couple pieces of styrofoam from previous packaging, repurposed rather than using floral foam for this, but really I just needed somewhere to stick all the planter picks into. I covered it with this crinkled packaging paper, which I got with an order somewhere, and repurposed that. You could use Spanish moss or green moss if you have that instead. I put some wooden skewers on the back of the bunny butt to be able to stick it into the styrofoam so that it would stand upright. Now it was time to build all the florals around there. I used some of this faux boxwood stems and some dainty little pink, different shades of pink florets, and just stuck those right into that styrofoam all the way around. To finish off our little bunny garden, I just tucked in those carrot picks from our very first craft. This next craft, we're going to use a small frame and some cork to create an adorable piece of bunny decor. I had this frame at home, but you can find them at the dollar store or even thrift store, and give it a coat of acrylic paint. We use this beautiful teal color. And while that's drying, we can start the painting onto the cork. We're going to measure the template, and you can get this template from sustainmycrafthabit.com. I'll link it below. And you're going to cut a piece of the cork, which comes from the dollar store. You can find it there, to the same size so that it'll fit into your frame. Now we're going to use this bunny template as a stencil to help us paint the design onto the cork. I just cut out the extra space around the bunny and then cut out the little sections inside the ears. And then you can use a pencil and trace this onto the cork. Now we're going to use some acrylic paint to fill in the bunny shape. Keep the cutout at hand as a bit of a guide, and we're going to do the face and the outer part of the ears with the white acrylic paint and the little paws, and then do pink cheeks. Don't forget that black bunny nose. Now it's almost time to put our bunny in the frame, but before doing so, we're going to just brush over the frame with some white chalk paint, and this will give it just a little bit more texture. Oh, we can't forget those whiskers on the bunny. I use just a paint pen for this, or if you have a fine paintbrush, you can use your black acrylic paint. And then we'll put that little painted bunny right inside the frame. And that's it. You've created a beautiful piece of decor for your spring decorating, but wouldn't this be adorable in a nursery as well? These wooden spoon Easter bunnies are a fun addition to any Easter basket, or plop them into your houseplants for some quick and easy springtime decor. To make the dresses for our little wood spoon bunnies, I simply cut a couple pieces of burlap fabric to a rough triangle shape and then painted them a spring green color. Next, I painted these dollar store wooden spoons just with some white paint and added little wooden hearts for the snouts. So 3 spoons make 3 little bunnies. After painting that white and letting it dry, I simply cut out some bunny ears from white cardstock paper and then used a little bit of pink acrylic paint to accent the inside of the ears. I also painted some wood beads with the same pink paint for the nose. Once the paint dried, I glued the wood bead onto the top of the heart snout and then used a black marker to add some eyes and whiskers to my bunny. I glued the bunny ears to the top of the wooden spoon and then the dress onto the handle. Now you can dress up your little bunny with whatever you'd like. I put on a couple of pink bows, some pink lace ribbon, and a little pom-pom bunny tail onto the back. If you'd like, you can also add some paws with a little bit of pipe cleaner that's folded over. These cute bunnies with dollar store wooden spoons were so simple and fun to make and really make a sweet gift for Easter. You can fill a little pod with some chocolate Easter eggs and then tuck in the bunnies for a really cute centerpiece idea as well. Our final Dollar Tree Easter craft is about as simple as it gets. We're going to use some of these plastic eggs and a bit of twine to make adorable farmhouse style eggs. So you're going to start by placing a little drop of glue on one top or bottom end of the egg and starting by gluing the twine on there. Then we'll work in little sections all the way down the sides of the egg, wrapping that twine as we go. Just be careful, the glue is hot. If you have one of those silicone finger protectors, that works really well here. And this just takes a little bit of time depending on how hot your glue is to hold the twine in place while it sets. I'm not one to just buy these plastic eggs for crafting. I like to reuse ones from my kids from the previous years, maybe ones that have cracks in them that are, not in good shape to reuse for gifting. Or if you have a neighbor, you can ask them if they have any of these Easter eggs left from before. I know as my kids get bigger, the Easter egg hunts get fewer and fewer, so I anticipate that we'll continue to have a collection of them at least to craft with and repurpose. At this point, we've gotten to the end of the egg and I trimmed off the tail, but you could leave it longer, loop it around, and create a hanging loop to put on a tree or hang on branches for another little decorative idea. Okay, so that's our twine wrapped egg. You're going to repeat this process with your other eggs, and you could leave it there, but we thought it'd be fun to paint them a little bit, and so I pulled out some of my metallic paints in kind of more modern colors, I guess this rose gold, a navy blue, and a silver, and just used my paintbrush to create stripes around the eggs in different widths and sizes. And that's all there is for this simple craft idea. These are really cute just on a tiered tray. Place a bunch of them in a basket, stuff them with other greenery, and you have an adorable accent for your spring decorating. We hope you've enjoyed these Dollar Tree craft ideas. Do let us know which is your favorite in the comments below. We'll be back again with another upcycling idea soon, so be sure to like and subscribe. Here's another one that we think you'll particularly like, and happy crafting!